Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024, Environmental Resources Committee meeting to order. First order, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Following the Pledge of Allegiance, we will have a short moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next order would be public comment. There was nobody that signed up for public comment, so we will move on to item number 4, the approval of the July 30, 2024 committee minutes. Motion made by Supervisor Ungerer, second by Supervisor Schoenborg. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Now we're going to open the public hearing. I would like to ask everybody, including the audience, to please mute your phone or any other electronic devices. The Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is now meeting in public hearing on the location, plans, and specification and purpose of the following projects. 5A1, Cole Yacht on behalf of Todd Eckers, General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of Reed. 5A2, Kurt and Lori Fromm on behalf of Tim and Linda Brame, Farmland Preservation to Rural Residential, Town of Hull. 5A3, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Russell Geis, General Agriculture to Urban Residential, Town of Frankfurt. 5A4, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Kevin and Peggy Miller, Neighborhood Commercial to Rural Residential and Low Density Residential, Town of Spencer. 5A5, Mitchell and Whitney Mishka, Rural Residential and General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Wayne. 5A6, Leonard Martin, Farm Preservation and Rural Residential to Rural Estate, Town of Hull. I would like to introduce the members of the committee. To my left, Supervisor Al Drabak, and Supervisor Rick Seefelt. Next is Supervisor John Kroll. Next to him is Supervisor Jay Schoenborn, then Supervisor Randy DeBrew, Supervisor Kim Ungerer, and our farm representative Tom Miller. We also have staff present, Lori Miskimmons, the director of CPZ. Kirsty's not here. Oh, Kirsty Heidenreich, County Conservationist, Shad Harvey, Land Resource Manager, Nicole Dillonay, Interim Office Manager, Garrett, well, Shad's not here, but Garrett Poggle, Land Use Specialist. The establishment of the ERC committee is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances, land conservation programs. This committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. This committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinance or state laws, but must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC committee will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A tape recording of this is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allow staff to present the staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant or anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those. First in favor, second opposed, then third as interested. The committee may ask questions of the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set reasonable time limit to individual statements on the overall length of the hearing. To promote orderly discussion, anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions related to the hearing should state your name, present your testimony, your questions, so it becomes a part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, the chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff or for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are a recommendation to the County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Contact staff for more information regarding the committee. Contact staff for more information regarding this committee board processes. The committee will now hear the application of 5A1 Cole Yock on behalf of Todd Eckers, General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of Reed. Garrett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do. All right, this is the staff report for Todd Eckers, petition to rezone land for September 3rd, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Cole Yock, living at 216162 County Road Y, Hatley, Wisconsin 54440. Property owner is Todd Eckers at 175706 Cassandra Joe Lane, Hatley, Wisconsin 54440. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on County Road Y and Cassandra Joe Lane, south of the intersection of County Road Y and County Road II. The petition of Cole Yock on behalf of Todd Eckers to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 Zoning Code to rezone lands from GA General Agriculture to RR Rural Residential, described as part of Lot 9 of Assessor's Plat Number 1 to the Town of Reed, located in the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 12, Township 27 North, Range 9 East, Town of Reed. The area proposed to be rezoned from GA to General Agriculture to Rural Residential is described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM, parent parcel number as shown. The Town of Reed Town Board met on July 9th, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, September 3rd, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Town recommendation. On July 9th, 2024, the Town of Reed Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation. The rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
All right, does any of the committee members have any questions for staff? Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, on question 11 there, on, I think, page 11, if I have that right, it, not 11, but 10, I'm sorry. It says the proposed rezone consists with the town's adapted comprehensive plan, and it says no. Is that a mistake that they just put in the wrong spot, or that should say yes, right?
Yeah, I believe it should. But at that point, if you wish, we could get more clarification from the town and then present that again next month.
Well, I'm thinking that somebody just put a mark on there that probably didn't read it really good and is probably okay, but I was just wondering.
Okay. We can also, it could be, without actually asking them. Director Miskimmons did mention too that we could, as a board, you could pass it on to the county board with the initiative that we clarify that question 10.
Could I ask one more question?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Explain the plat thing. I don't think we see that very often, rezones in this is a plat or by a plat or,
Oh, this CSM?
yes.
Okay. What's your specific question about,
On the
Just in
page
shape.
previously, I think page 10, it was a plat, you had read the assessor's plat number 1.
oh, yeah, so a plat compared to a CSM, a plat is basically, it looks just like a certified survey map, but it's not something that's necessarily recorded. It's basically done as a commission. Some of them are recorded, but they're basically done as a commission from the town to outline these lots. That's just the name of this document that established this subdivision here.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I will ask, is anybody here that would like to speak for 5A1? Again, is there anybody that would like to speak for 5A1? Okay, is there anybody who would like to speak against 5A1? One more time, is there anybody that would like to speak against 5A1? Is there anybody that would like to speak as interested in 5A1? Seeing none, I will declare the public hearing closed and the committee will deliberate. What's your wishes? Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make a motion for the petition of Cole Yack on behalf of Todd Eckers to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone land from GA, General Agricultural, to RR, Rural Residential in the town of Reed, and to pass the conclusions of law and to look at the question number 10. Okay. And to move it on to county board.
Okay, do I have a second? Supervisor Kroll had a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we move on to 5A2. Kurt and Lori Fromm on behalf of Tom and Linda Brame, Farmland Preservation to Rural Residential, Town of Hull.
All right, this is for Thomas and Linda Brame, petition to rezone land. Staff report September 3rd, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioners Kurt and Lori Fromm, residing at 221871 Silver Maple Lane, Colby, Wisconsin, 54421. The property owner is Thomas and Linda Brame, 103246 Choke Cherry Road, Unity, Wisconsin, 54481. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on Silver Maple Lane, approximately 1/2 mile south of the Mulberry Road and Silver Maple Lane intersection. The petition of Kurt and Lori Fromm on behalf of Tom and Linda Brame to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from FP Farmland Preservation to RR Rural Residential located in part of the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 28, Township 28 North, Range 2 East, Town of Hull. The area to be rezoned from FP Farmland Preservation to RR Rural Residential is described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM, parcel number as listed. The Town of Hull Town Board met on July 17th, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, September 3rd, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Town recommendation on July 17th, 2024, the Town of Hull Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPC staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPC staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
All right, does any committee members have questions for staff? Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to confirm that there was actually farming going on in this zone. It seems to be a very small lot, and judging by the aerial, it doesn't look like there was actually any farming going on.
Right, so as you can see, I'll try to zoom out here. Between the aerial image and the CSM, the dotted line is where the current property line is, which is what you can see on the aerial reflected in yellow. He is attempting to absorb a small portion to the south, which appears to be some field there. According to their petition, get that pulled back up here. Oh, where it talks about farming. There is a small amount of ag land being changed, and they did indicate that that production does change per year.
Okay, any other questions for staff? All right, we'll move on. Is anybody here to speak for the 5A2? Would anybody like to speak for item 5A2? Okay, would anybody like to speak against 5A2? Once more, would anybody like to speak against 5A2? Okay, would anybody like to speak as interested, 5A2? Okay, I will declare the public hearing closed for 5A2. The committee will deliberate. What's your wishes? Supervisor Drabak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezone of Thomas and Linda Brame from farmland preservation to rural residential based on the findings of fact as presented by staff and conclusions of law, also the town's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a second? Supervisor DeBrew. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will move on to item 5A3. Tim Breland on behalf of Russell Giese, General Agriculture to Urban Residential, Town of Frankfurt.
All right, this is for Russell Giese, petition to rezone land, staff report September 3rd, 2024, for the Environmental Resources Committee. Petitioner is Tim Breland, located at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. Property owner is Russell Giese, located at 114633 Huckleberry Road, Edgar, Wisconsin, 54426. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on Pine Nut Road, just south of the intersection of Pine Nut Road and State Highway 29. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Russell Giese to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from GA General Agriculture to UR Urban Residential, located in part of the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 2, Township 28 North, Range 3 East, Town of Frankfurt. Area to be rezoned from GA General Agriculture to UR Urban Residential is described as part of Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM. Parent parcel number is listed. Town of Frankfurt Town Board met on August 12, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee is meeting today, September 3rd, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Town recommendation. On August 12, 2024, the Town of Frankfurt Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to Marathon County's Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
All right, does anybody in the committee have questions for staff? Okay, so I'll ask, is there anybody that would like to speak for item 5A3? Once again, would anybody like to speak for item 5A3? Would anybody like to speak against item 5A3? One more time, would anybody like to speak against 5A3? Would anybody like to speak as interested in 5A3? Okay, seeing none, I will declare the public hearing closed and the committee will deliberate. What's your wishes? Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion on the petition of Tim Verlin on behalf of Russell Giese to amend the Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17, Code to rezone land from GA, General Agricultural, to UR, Urban Residential in the town of Frankfurt, and to pass the conclusions of law and forward to the county board.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Supervisor Drabek. Okay, with a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to item 5A4. Tim Vreeland on behalf of Kevin and Peggy Miller, neighborhood commercial to rural residential and low-density residential in the town of Spencer.
All right, this is for Kevin and Peggy Miller, petition to rezone land. Staff report September 3rd, 2024, Environmental Resources Committee. Petitioners Tim Vreeland, 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. The property owners are Kevin and Peggy Miller at 200767 Robin Road, Marshfield, Wisconsin, 54449. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on the southeast corner of Robin Road and Jenny Lane. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Kevin and Peggy Miller to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from NC neighborhood commercial to RR rural residential and LDR low density residential as described as Lot 1 of CSM 5832-21-150, located in the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 34, Township 26 North, Range 2 East, Town of Spencer. Area to be rezoned to LDR low-density residential is described as Lot 1, and area to be rezoned to RR rural residential is described as Lot 2 of the preliminary CSM, parent parcel number as listed. The Town of Spencer Town Board met on August 12, 2024. Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, September 3rd, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On August 12, 2024, the Town of Spencer Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
All right, does any committee members have questions for staff? Okay, no questions. So would anybody like to speak for item number 5A4? One more time, would anybody like to speak for item number 5A4? Okay, would anybody like to speak against item number 5A4? Would anybody like to speak against item 5A4? Okay, would anybody like to speak as interested on 5A4? Seeing none, I will declare the public hearing closed and the committee will deliberate. What's your wishes? Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion for the petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Kevin and Peggy Miller to amend the General Court Ordinance of Marathon County's Chapter 17 Code to rezone land from NC Neighborhood Commercial to rural RR Rural Residential and to LDR Low Density Residential in the town of Spencer, and to approve the conclusions of law and move it to the county board.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Supervisor Unger with the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 5A5. Mitchell and Whitney Mishka, rural residential and general agriculture to rural estate, town of Wayne.
All right, this is from Mitchell and Whitney Mishka, petition to rezone land, staff report September 3rd, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Mitchell and Whitney Mishka, located at 122312 Leroy Street, Edgar, Wisconsin, 54426. The property owner is the same. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on Leroy Street, just west of the intersection of Leroy Street and Pleasant Drive. The petition of Mitchell and Whitney Mishka to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from RR Rural Residential and GA General Agriculture to RE Rural Estate, described as Lot 1 and part of Lot 2 of CSM number 16927, document number 1677273, located in part of the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 33, Township 28 North, Range 4 East, Town of Wayne. Parent parcels as listed. The Town of Wayne Town Board met August 12, 2024. Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, September 3rd, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On August 12, 2024, the Town of Wayne Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
All right, does any committee members have questions for staff? Okay, no questions. Would anybody like to speak for item 5A5? Once again, would anybody like to speak for item 5A5? Is there anybody that would like to speak against item 5A5? Once again, is there anybody that would like to speak against item 5A5? Would anybody like to speak as interested in item 5A5? Seeing none, I will declare the public hearing over and the committee will deliberate. Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezone of Mitchell and Whitney Mishka from rural residential to general agriculture, to rural estate, based on the findings of fact and as presented by staff and conclusions of law. Also, the town's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Supervisor DeBrew with the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Last one. Item 5A6, Leonard Martin, farmland preservation and rural residential to rural estate, Town of Hull.
All right, this is for Leonard Martin, petition to rezone land. Staff report September 3rd, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Leonard Martin at 103-908 County Road N, Colby, Wisconsin 54421. The property owner is the same. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on County Road N, west of the intersection of County Road N and Chestnut Hill Lane. The petition of Leonard Martin to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County's Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from FP farmland preservation and RR rural residential to RE rural estate, described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM, located in part of the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter and part of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 16, Township 28 North, Range 2 East, Town of Hull. Parent parcel numbers as listed. Town of Hull Town Board met on August 12th, 2024. Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, September 3rd, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On August 12th, 2024, the Town of Hull Town Board recommended approval of the Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
All right, does any committee members have questions for staff? Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a line of questioning, so I'd just like to be recognized until my questioning is done. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, go ahead.
So staff, I'm just curious, can you just summarize this again one more time for the whole committee? It seems there's a lot of like moving pieces. So I guess like my general question is, how much land is being taken out of farmland preservation?
3/4 of an acre.
3/4 of an acre. I guess in this case, is this part of an AEA site?
It is not. It's one of the areas that did not accept the AEA. So this property, the 40 that is where the 3/4 acre is being taken out of, is not part of an AEA.
Okay.
So it is not currently able to collect credits, but even with this rezone, it would still be eligible if it so choose later on to enter that program.
Perfect. Great, thank you. I guess the follow-up question is this land that is in the farmland pres, is this also in the nutrient management plan program?
So it does appear, I was talking with the conservation staff earlier about this one. It did receive some cost sharing for nutrient management, but with the 3/4 of an acre that's being removed and added with this rezone, the property owned by, Leonard Martin would not need to adhere to the nutrient management part of it because it's not in farmland preservation or in ag anymore.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, we will move on. Anybody wanting to speak for item 5A6? One more time. Is anybody wanting to speak for item 5A6? Okay, would anybody like to speak against item 5A6? Would anybody like to speak against 5A6? Would anybody like to speak as interested in 5A6? Okay, seeing none, I will declare this public hearing closed and the committee will once again deliberate. What are your wishes? Supervisor Unger.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the petition of Leonard Martin to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from farm preservation and rural residential to rural estate in the town of Hull, per the facts and findings of staff, ERC board, and pass it to the full board.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Supervisor Seifelt with a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to item 5B, review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. We have none. 5C, review and possible recommendations for the county board consideration. Again, none. Move on to item 6, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, and committee discussions. We'll start with 6A1, Big O Plain Reservoir, discussion on next efforts.
There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for saving all your mental and emotional energy for this very important discussion. Okay. Just to introduce ourselves, I know we all know each other now, but Kirsty Heidenreich, County Conservationist.
Jared Motter, Water Resources Technician.
And we just wanted to dive a little bit more into the discussion that we had started at our July special meeting with you all, talking about things that we're currently working on in the Big O Plain Reservoir, and then also looking ahead into the future. You know, what can we accomplish together as a committee and as conservation staff during this 2-year term that you have to make a difference? We just wanted to make sure that this was going to be kept fresh on your mind and fresh on the agenda, so that, you know, time doesn't just slip away from us. And before we know it, you know, another year or two will have gone on. So Jared's going to start out with giving us just a little bit of an update, talking about our beach testing pilot program. So several months ago, we had given you the very exciting news that we had gotten a DNR grant to start a few new initiatives, and then we've never really given you much of an update since then. So that's how we're going to start our presentation today, is giving you an update on that.
All right, so as Kirsty mentioned, this is part of that DNR surface water grant that we received earlier this year. And one of the deliverables or the goals of that was to start this pilot program for the Big O Plain County Park Beach, to start testing it for E. coli, fecal coliform, and then doing some visual inspections for blue-green algae. So the picture there is actually a sample that we collected on August 13th, and it's a little nasty. So I think we actually have a video here just so you can kind of get a little bit better idea of what we're looking at. It's very thick, kind of paint-like, and that's typically characteristic of a blue-green algae. If you see the big mats that look more like a hair, that's like your filamentous type algae. It's usually not as concerning from a health perspective, but when it's real thick and like a paint-like substance, that's typically when it's the most concerning for recreationists. Oops. So as part of this pilot program, we've been partnering with the Health Department, the Parks Department, and the Wisconsin DNR, trying to figure out kind of the best way to move forward with it. And one of the ideas that was brought up is to install these advisory signs. And these advisory signs, as you can see in the picture, we have 3 different advisory levels. The lowest level, which is these green signs, are going to be displayed at all times at the beach, and that's just basically saying that even if there's nothing, you know, visible or the results are okay, it's always still a risk to swim in a body of water like this or recreate in a body of water like this. So these signs are actually located at 3 different spots around the beach. This one is closest to the parking lot. There's one right on the beach, and there's one from leading from a trail from the campground. So those advisory go up from a green level advisory to a yellow to a red. If it hits a red warning, it's not a beach closure per se, but it's us saying that it's the highest risk to possibly recreate in that water. It's the best chance of possibly getting ill, your pet's getting ill, things like that. And those are all based on our bacteria results from the lab. So anything from a 0 to 250 coliform forming units, or CFUs, is the green. 250 to 1,000 is yellow, and anything over 1,000, that's when we hit our red advisory level. However, so far our results have shown that the bacteria has been very low, but due to our concerns with the algae, we've been leaving the advisory levels on the red advisory levels, which is a way for us to let the public know that although the bacteria levels are relatively low and probably safe, the algae is, a bigger concern at this time. One of the other ways that we can kind of keep an eye on some of these blooms is actually through this technology that EPA has. They can actually track algal blooms from satellite imagery. So we'll just kind of zoom in. You can kind of see the upper left corner, that's actually the Big O Plain there, which tends to have, some of the higher levels of these harmful algal blooms in the state, which is a little concerning. And then, so these water quality, it continues to be a concern for all of our recreationists. This is a picture from the boat landing just east of the beach on the same day we collected that sample on August 13th. So I'm just going to scroll through a set of pictures here that kind of just show some of the things that we're working with. This is the beach that same day. So that film you can see kind of building up on the sand, that's the indicator that there's likely blue-green algae as part of this bloom, and it's not just the filamentous. This is also at the boat landing here, so rather green.
No filters, right, Jared?
No filters. Yep. So, and actually in this one here, you can kind of see those specks, those globs of like the bluish hue, and that's kind of what you're very characteristic of a blue-green algae bloom, which are what we're typically most concerned with for a health standpoint. So.
And we've talked in detail about the Big O Plain County Park together as a group as we've been through our little journey over the past year or two with the different initiatives that we've been working on with the Big O Plain Reservoir. We know that this is the county park where we're getting the most revenue from. It is our biggest recreational water body reservoir in the county. And so it's very, very important to our local economy as well. And the water quality, it not only is a concern for those of us in the science community, those of us that love to recreate in our water here in Marathon County, but it certainly continues to be a concern for our community as well. And this is something that we don't necessarily get into very much because we focus so much on the science in this committee as well. But this was just doing a very simple search on social media. This is on Facebook. If you just go to the search bar and you type in Big O Plain, these are just posts from this summer when we blocked out people's names and pictures, so privacy is intact. And it was very evident in just skimming through in a couple minutes on Facebook that there are a lot of very common fallacies in our community about what's safe and what's unsafe in terms of recreating in these waters. So you guys have these slides in your packet so you can look over them a little bit more closely. But, we have one lady saying that, our daughter will be fine because we just made sure that we prayed over her after we were done swimming. And like that lady sounds like she's trying to be a great mom, but also we want people to understand that, we want to work with science in order to have parents making very informed decisions on what is safe and isn't safe for their children and also their animals as well. And then this other post is in a Wisconsin campground group, which there's tens of thousands of people. And, it's someone saying, we're so excited to head to the Big O Plain campground, and then people are saying you have to stay out of the water, you can't go in the water. And so this beautiful county park we have is unfortunately getting known for it being unusable in terms of recreating in the water. And this page is just showing another common fallacy. Someone someone saying, oh, the water's fine as long as you aren't walking through it and gurgling it. So, we know that that's not entirely true. Again, this is a very quick search, but many of these posts had hundreds of shares, hundreds of comments, meaning there's thousands of people, not only in Wisconsin, but beyond, looking at these comments and seeing what's going on in Marathon County. And so this just kind of brings us back to that conversation that we had at our special meeting in July in terms of how can we move the needle with manure management in Marathon County. I put together just a very brief list of what we're doing, not only in Marathon County, but specifically in the western side of the county where we're seeing more of these water quality concerns. And so we are working on developing a manure advisory system specifically for the Big O Plain watershed, which would entail contacting farmers directly in terms of safe times to be spreading manure. We also have about 60% of our cropland acres that are covered in nutrient management plans, which does help identify the proper timing and proper rates of application for manure management. So we loved the nutrient management question in the last rezone. Those are the questions that we want to be asking as we're going through this process. Nicole, could we make sure everyone's muted online? You got it? Okay, great. We work really hard on, continuing to enroll townships and areas in the Farmland Preservation Program, because we know in that program, participants have to at least meet the minimum state standards for ag laws. This committee has been very supportive of our Fenwood pilot program, which is one of the key smaller watersheds within the Big O Plain watershed. We also are so fortunate to have our producer-led group, EPIC, in Western Marathon County. They are just phenomenal and known around the state for the outreach and education that community-led group does related to conservation. We also have really grown a water action volunteer program that you all learned about in July, where Jared works with about 25 volunteers to be testing streams around the county. And we've just really been selling the heck out of CREP, a riparian buffer program, over the past year or two, making sure people are installing buffers along the streams. So we are doing everything we can, and yet we are still seeing pictures like what I just showed you. And it truthfully makes my heart sad to even have to put pictures like that in a slideshow, because pictures like that are commonly how we see water look like in third world countries. You'd expect a picture like that to be from, a place in India, not a place in Marathon County. But if you look at a map of our impaired waterways in Marathon County, everything that is red is listed as impaired by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So almost every single river and stream in Western Marathon County is declared impaired by the U.S. EPA. So if anything, it should be telling us there's more that we can be doing, even if, we have a conservation staff that is taking advantage of all of the programs that the state of Wisconsin has to offer. I am a firm believer that there are things that we can do locally, pulling ourselves by our own bootstraps here in the county, not relying on the state of Wisconsin, not relying on the federal government, but working together here locally, deciding how to fix our local problems. And we do such a good job in this county saying over and over in all that we do, what's our vision? We want to be the healthiest, the safest, the most prosperous county in Wisconsin. And how can we do that when our highest used park, getting us the most revenue, looks like those pictures we saw on the screen today? We cannot say that and have our water looking like this. And so these are some slides that are repeat slides from the special meeting. I just put them in the packet because I want them to be a resource for folks who may flip back to these slides and get some of these facts again. There have been so many studies done on the Big O Plain watershed that we are past the point of needing to collect more data, needing to write more reports, needing to do more studies. The DNR has studied the Big O Plain River in the winter, and that water is 14 times worse than the raw sewage going into the Wausau wastewater treatment facility. That study is a wake-up call to us. There's also been a study done by a doctor in the U.S. Department of Agriculture showing that winter manure applications can increase runoff 250 to 360% versus non-winter applications. So we know that in a county that has 650 million gallons of manure, that if there is something that we can do to decrease runoff 360%, that is likely an area that we need to focus on together. That is something that can move the needle in our lifetime. All these other things that we are doing, that we are plugging away at slowly, the water will still look the same in 20 years as it does today, but we need to do something to move the needle in a larger way than we have been. So again, I just turned to a report that's already been written. This is, about a decade ago. This was after the huge fish kill in the Big Old Plain Reservoir, where 80% of the fishery was killed off. Countless people came together, including the Marathon County Board, and they came up together with a list of action items. And these action items say Marathon County will. These are the things that the county will do. And so I just want to talk about two of those with you today. One thing is to minimize or eliminate winter land surface spreading activities of wastes. So again, this is kind of that low-hanging fruit in terms of we know that this will be incredibly effective if this is one area that we can brainstorm on together. And so, we heard the committee say to us last time that something incremental would be probably something that would be a very good compromise to try to work towards together. And so we agree, absolutely, incremental steps to get there together is the way to go over the course of several years. So we have brainstormed as a conservation staff just several ideas that we could talk about together, and maybe you have ideas that aren't even on this list. I know at the last meeting when we talked about this, we said, what if we did a subcommittee? And then we heard Mike tell the very onerous process of forming a subcommittee, and we decided, well, maybe that's not something we want to do. And so I think just keeping this on the agenda and talking about it as a committee is probably the best way to go. So what if one suggestion were to come up with kind of a step 1, step 2 process over a couple of years? And if step 1 is working with our livestock license farms, so these are our large farms in the county that are not yet a CAFO. So a CAFO is a confined animal feeding operation. That is a farm that has over 1,000 animal units. They are regulated by the Wisconsin DNR. It's a very detailed permit that the Wisconsin DNR follows the US EPA rules to guide those farms. The county does really not deal with those farms as much. So when a farm has between 500 and 999 animal units in Marathon County, we require those farms to get a special license to operate here. And that makes sure that they have enough infrastructure to be able to support that large of enough operation. They are monitored once a year on site by our staff, and then they also have to submit quarterly reports related to manure logs, et cetera. So if we were to ask over, a period of time that the committee would decide that our livestock license farms, our large farms, were not spreading liquid manure in impaired watersheds only, that would probably be about 10 farms in Marathon County would be the first step. And those are those large farms. And again, this would only be in impaired watersheds. So remember I showed that map with the red lines, those areas, those are our impaired watersheds. So the east side of the county, we really don't have that. We have one tiny little blip in the far northeast close to Anago where Springbrook is also impaired, but it's predominantly the west side of the county. And then step 2 could be something like farms with 999 animal units, so right before coming a CAFO. This size, 300 to 999, the US EPA defines this size of farm as a medium-sized CAFO. And if you really want to dig into the details of why they chose to define that size as a medium-sized CAFO, I have the website there for you, and you can certainly look into that. But, the US EPA, the Wisconsin DNR, this is kind of the threshold that we use as a medium-sized farm. So the reason why we thought this may be a good incremental step is we knew that a common concern could be something like, if we say no spreading of liquid manure in impaired watersheds in the winter on frozen soils only, probably the first thing you'd expect to hear is, what about the small family farms, right? I think that would probably be the number one response we would have. So this would be just targeting the medium and the large farms in which they are at a size where we would really, really hope they would have good, solid infrastructure to support their operation when they've grown to that size. So even 300 dairy cows, that's a lot of liquid manure. That's a lot of milk house waste that's coming out of the farm. It's a lot of nutrients. They got to find a place to go with it. And so this would not affect the small family farms. This would not affect beef farmers that have solid manure only and no liquid manure. So it's a pretty specific set. There are many, many county assistance ideas here. I could have filled up 10 slides here, but here's just a couple examples. Perhaps the county could consider funding to assist with manure storage rentals instead of farmers applying that winter liquid manure. What I mean by this is, 30 years ago, Marathon County had about 1,500 dairy farms in the county. Today, we have about 500 dairy farms. 30 years ago, there was millions upon millions of dollars in conservation programs where every farmer got a manure pit, every farmer got a concrete barnyard. There's lots of money going into conservation. So there are hundreds of government-funded, good, solid designed manure pits on the landscape in Marathon County. There could be up to 1,000 of them that are no longer being used. And so even in the several years that I've been here in Marathon County, we have worked with farmers who are spreading a lot of manure in the winter, and we're seeing a lot of runoff into streams. So we're working with them because we get calls into the spill hotline saying, my stream is brown, there's manure running down the stream. That farmer says, I can't afford a $500,000 manure pit. We say, absolutely, that makes total sense. Looking on this map that we have, because we have every single manure pit inventoried and mapped in Marathon County, we are able to locate 6 usable manure pits that are no longer being used within 2 miles of your property. And you know what? It's worked out every time to connect them with a neighbor where they just have to pay their neighbor a little rental payment, maybe a couple $1,000s a year, a couple $100s a year, depending on how big of a farm they have. That neighbor's very happy to get a little bit of rental income from something that they aren't even using on their farm. And that farmer's very happy because they don't have to spend hundreds of $1,000s on a new manure pit when they really don't need one anyway. It's just a couple months of the year where things are really tight for them. So we have good, solid infrastructure in Marathon County. Again, Marathon County has the highest density of dairy farms in the entire world. So we've been spending decades building up our infrastructure here, and it'd really be a shame just to kind of let it all go and not use it. So it's here. And we're totally willing to work with the farmers to locate available manure storages as well. Again, if this is something we do incrementally, we have plenty of time to work with them. And then we're fortunate enough to have Kirk and Matt on staff. They're certified agronomists that are certified trait nutrient management plans. They'd be willing to write these plans for free for limited numbers of acres a year for farmers that don't have these. Okay, and then so the second item I wanted to discuss with you today off of that list of action items from the plan says Marathon County will promote technologies to treat and distribute livestock waste. So here we have a couple ideas, and really there's endless possibilities as well. So one idea we had is, we have a lot of custom manure applicators in Marathon County. So a lot of farmers will hire these people to come and apply manure on acreage so that they don't have to do it themselves. It'd be interesting to reach out to them because there is a directory for them, just seeing if they've had much request for a low disturbance manure toolbar. This is a way that you can apply manure where it's essentially injected down into the soil so that there's very little runoff. So it decreases runoff drastically. So instead of what some counties have done is they've bought one of these toolbars and people can essentially come rent it, just like we have rental drills to plant seed in our department. But instead of having that and worrying about keeping it and storing a stinky manure spreader somewhere on county property, what if we, if there is demand for this out there, what if we incentivized with small little payments people using this low disturbance type of toolbar instead of traditional manure spreading. I just included a snippet of this article because this was just about a week ago in the Wisconsin State Farmer, front page, saying this is an eco-friendly way to add nutrients to the soil. I mean, at the end of the day, manure is the best nutrients we have, and we're just letting it all run off and go into our water, which adds problems. But we want it in the soil, and the soil needs those nutrients as well. Another thing we could also do is we could develop a competitive grant program in-house that would help fund manure flow meters for dragline injectors. So this is basically saying, people who are injecting into the soil, we want them to have a flow meter to know exactly how many gallons per acre they are applying. So that's not necessarily something that's always happening, and the state does have limits on how many gallons per acre you can apply. And so we would want them to have that meter there so that we don't run into scenarios where many of us have probably driven past fields in the summer where you see it just soggy and wet with manure. We want it to be applied properly. Also, another thing we would love is to try to do a trial basis cover crop funding for our large farms, our CAFOs, to try on limited acres. So this is a problem we've run into specifically in our priority watershed, the Fenwood Creek watershed. About 60% of that acreage in that watershed is owned by a CAFO. And unfortunately, we don't have any type of funding available to assist CAFOs because CAFOs aren't allowed to accept any type of state money whatsoever. And so they have to completely go out on a limb and take a risk of spending, whatever money it is to risk trying a new cover crop, a new trial, new technology, whereas all these other farms are able to essentially subsidize the risk for them to try something new, because it is common for them to try, something new, like try a cover crop for the first time. Well, the first time you do it, a lot of times it's trial by error. You don't plant it at the right time, you don't terminate it at the right time, etc. You usually run into some type of problem. And so it would be great if for our larger farms, even if we could say less than 100 acres of cost sharing, just to do like a mini science experiment to see if they like it, then they could do it on higher rates, higher acreage on their own dime. Okay, just about lastly here, we could also contract with farmers that have no-till corn planters and are available for hire to no-till on fields that other farmers may be interested in trying, but don't have the equipment or knowledge. So no-till planters do not disturb the soil very much at all. So there's a lot less soil erosion. There's a lot less soil leaving the field with these types of planters. And it's also still not common yet for farmers to have these. So we would be preventing more runoff if we were able to incentivize having someone do this kind of planting across the county. And then lastly here, we could essentially do a mini Fenwood pilot project that has been so successful for us for the last 4 years. It'd essentially be giving farmers a chance to have, probably one field. It's a max of 50 acres just to do a pay for performance on that field. So with our Fenwood pilot program, we asked farmers to bring down the phosphorus index, or how much phosphorus is leaving their field per acre for their whole farm. So if they have 500 acres, they got to put their whole farm in it. They have to bring their phosphorus index down on the whole farm. Well, what if we just let people try it on one field? Okay, what can you do differently on this one field, Farmer Joe, to bring that phosphorus index way down? Can we work with you to do a combination of planting cover crops, to do no-till? There's a lot of different things we could work with them on, but let's have them see just on that one field that it can work. And you guys can read through this kind of on your own time too, but I just wanted to put in there just a little snippet from the Marathon County Land and Water Resource Management Plan. And again, I've offered to give anyone a copy that wants a full copy of this plan. It is a great little read. This plan was put together by approved by ERC and put together by conservation staff. And then this was adopted by the full county board in 2021. And it was decided by ERC and the county board that conservation staff should be developing voluntary and regulatory options where we're coming up with things to greatly reduce the risk of runoff during the high risk times of year. That is the winter melt-off. So that's exactly what we're doing here today. So it was decided by the full county board that this is what we should be doing and coming up with. And so you can see here, this is a figure of the phosphorus contributions in the Big O Plain watershed. So that top graph, the red part of it, that shows dairy manure as well. So again, we're focusing just on liquid manure in impaired watersheds. So that is primarily coming from dairy in this area. And this, again, this is data that's already been collected. This is real data from Marathon County. So just to kind of wrap it up here before we hear your thoughts, I think it would be absolutely wonderful to hold a public listening session and invite a wide variety of groups to the table. So our CAFO farms, our large farms, medium-sized farms, what about the lake groups like BEPCO, the Big O Plain citizens groups? Let's see what they have to say and how they think it would be perceived in their individual communities. And then I would also love to reach out to the Marathon County Farm Bureau and also the Wisconsin Farmers Union. They have supported many conservation efforts that this committee has put forth in the past, and I think it would be great to see, what their ideas are as well, and see if they would support these types of suggestions. So with that, I thank you for your time and for any potential input.
This comment I have, I was absolutely shocked at the satellite image. I grew up in the Fox Valley. I know full well what Lake Winnebago looks like in the summertime. It's not nice. To see the Big O Plain is worse. That's horrifying. So yeah, we really need to step up. We can't wait for the agencies above us, like state and federal, to take this into their hands. We, as Marathon County, we got to do something. Not even just thinking about us. All that garbage flows down the Mississippi River and it's killing the Gulf of Mexico. So I think as good stewards of the land throughout, we need to step up and do something. What are your thoughts? Questions? Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question of the sampling at Big O Plain. It looked like you were taking some beach samples. Did you take any other samples across the lake, maybe in the middle, on the other side of the beach, anything like that?
No, not yet. Next summer, we'll be continuing this, and there's a possibility to try some other areas. But for this summer, we just did the beach, and then we actually collected a couple samples at the boat landing, which was just east of the beach, just to kind of compare those. But other than that, that was the only location so far.
And then just to follow up, I'm curious, you said there was 10 large CAFOs in the county. How many medium-sized are there in the county? Or did I hear that wrong?
So there is actually more than 10 CAFOs. So the livestock sighting farms. So we have, I believe it is 16, I'm going to say 14 to 16 livestock sighting farms in Marathon County. So those are the farms that are permitted through our county, not through the Wisconsin DNR. Those are the 500 animal units to 999 animal units. Now, don't let the number fool you, though. There are many more farms that size because this program only started in about 2015. So anyone that was in existence at that time within the 500 to 999 were grandfathered in. So this is just people that have expanded by at least 20% and are in that range. So when I said about 10, that is without perfectly delineating on a map with the impacted watersheds. Just in the western half of Marathon County, in the impaired watersheds, there's going to be probably about 10 of those livestock licensing farms. I believe there's 15 or 16 CAFOs in Marathon County total. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so I guess really what I wanted to get to is I like the suggestion of targeting the farms between 300 and 999 animal units. That seems like a plausible starting point for sure. It can encompass a lot more farms instead of just the very big ones. So yeah.
And one thing that I did not mention, and I bet you Tom is going to mention it. Tom, could you tell us what the rules are for CAFOs for winter spreading? I did not get into that in my presentation.
The rules for a CAFO are absolutely no spreading in the winter and zero discharge. So my question was on these 300 to 999 farms, how are you determining how much storage they should need? I talked to our custom applicator, and all they've been doing the last month is jumping from farm to farm to keep their pits low enough to make it till harvest. It's like no one's setting the size or determining the size properly. They're adding cows, but their storage isn't there. It doesn't matter what size.
Yeah. And what is concerning about that is in the state of Wisconsin, unless you are a CAFO, there is no law regulating how much storage you have to have. So a very common problem is farmers will add more cows, add more cows, add more cows. They don't add more infrastructure to support things like the storage that they need to make sure that there's not runoff, in the barnyard area. All these things that are regulated farms like CAFOs have to have in place before they can expand any further. And so that is something that we would have to work with them on in a nutrient management plan. The computer system that you do the plan in really helps calculate the storage that you would need as well.
You get a year like this, though, and I mean, you got to have a bigger cushion than what's out there. I know CAFOs are out of storage, so it goes higher than just the standard livestock siding sizes you're targeting. And I don't know what the answer is, but that's one of our bigger problems.
So are you saying that you would be in favor of something encompassing more than just starting at a 300 animal unit threshold?
Just how you determine the size of storage you need. I mean, if it's when they say 9 months storage, I mean, I think everybody should have 12 months storage minimum, no matter what size. That's would be my recommendation.
Yeah. I know that a couple of my coworkers are online right now too, and I wonder if Matt Repking is still online because he has talked about this many times. Matt is still online. Matt, would you be willing to provide a comment about the storage windows if we were to move forward in one of these scenarios?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So for the storage, it would really come down to how they're calculating those numbers as far as what their storage capacity is. And as long as they're being honest, the farmer's being honest with what animal numbers they have, they can build a storage to accommodate more, especially these last few years, if we have better numbers as far as what the precip values are. But still, the ultimate comes down to the cost.
I think having 180 days of storage is a common regulatory goal. Is that what CAFOs need to have storage? 180 days.
That's not enough.
Not enough.
Yeah, I agree. That it probably does need to be more. Especially up in our area where we have early winters, sometimes late springs, and sometimes 6 months turns into 9 months.
Yeah. So, all these details would need to be flushed out in extreme detail. And these are very brief bullet point suggestions, you guys. It's kind of like what sounds like something that you would like us to start exploring, because you have a team of 8 conservationists that wants nothing more than to see that water look different than what was on the screen today. And so we are here to do the heavy lifting. You have very, very smart people with a lot of experience on your staff. And so put us to work. We're willing to, research all these tidbits and come back to you with a solid set of ideas and guidelines and programs that we can roll out incrementally over a couple of years' time. But I don't know if there's ever going to be a better time than now it's been such a pleasure to work with you guys already just these past couple months. And it's been so rewarding to see you invest in your own knowledge, coming to trainings and special meetings and working with us. So I think truly the stars have aligned for us to work together to try to get some of this done. And I would like to see it happen in my lifetime. I'm a product of Marathon County too. I grew up here. I'm an East Sider. I didn't grow up on the west side. My first time visiting the Big Old Plain was actually as an adult. I didn't even know it was a thing. It's amazing how there's 2 different two different worlds. But, I grew up swimming in Nori Lake and Mission Lake, and, I'm raising a family here. I have 2 little kids. We went to Castle Rock County Park, which is a Wisconsin River flowage south of us 2 weekends ago. And my kids, who are 6 and 10, were just so mad at me that I wouldn't let them swim in the water. And I showed them pictures of the big old plane that I had on my phone. And I said, you guys, this is what's floating downstream to this, and so we had a little science lesson on the spot, but other kids are swimming. Mom, why are you so mean? I'm sorry, and the beach was closed for E. coli anyway, but, it affects us personally when we're here in this county. These are our resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, you just said a little while ago, like the Fox Valley, Lake Winnebago, throughout the United States, are there any other type of reservoirs like this out there? And what are their actions? I mean, let's say in Mississippi, are we not really taking a look at, when people come down to Old Plain? I was there like 3 weeks ago. I drove down there. Beautiful park. I just couldn't believe it. I've been there when I was a little kid camping. It's been many years since I've been back. And I just think, I understand the farm, or the runoff and everything, but, once the water turns green, you lose a lot of people. And I think, if this was like Lake Minocqua, or, since I have a place up there, and if it was like that, there wouldn't be nobody there. Nobody would come up. But do we have any idea or any resources what their strategy plans on, if they do anything? Are there chemicals? Are there skimmers? Are there what? I don't know. This is too new to me, but I'm just saying, what type of plans do they have put into place?
I guess that would be something that could be researched, but my personal opinion, I think prevention. We got to work on ways for prevention, and that is going to be working with the farmers. Like one of the biggest hurdles we have is, as we've been told, Western Marathon County and Eastern Clark County, that's the most dense population of dairy farms. So I think working together with the farmers, come up with a common solution to prevent this, I think would be my best solution.
Yeah, it absolutely needs to happen on the land, for sure. It's a 7,000-acre reservoir, so you couldn't begin to treat it. It's just, you got to change the landscape. And, and like I said earlier, we're so fortunate that there's been countless reports and plans done and studies done. And it's honestly probably the top 10 most studied watersheds in the state of Wisconsin, partially because we're so close to UW-Stevens Point. So they've done lots of research on it. So, we know how to fix it. And, the plan's been laid out for us already. We just have to be willing to take the next step together.
Can the county make plans or rules to regulate this, or does the state overrule us? If we make rules in the county, we can do that they have to abide by?
Yes, we can make local rules. Yes.
Any other questions or comments or input? Well, I saw some great suggestions on the slides. I'm sure you have many, many more. I would agree that we need to keep this on the table in meetings going forth.
Okay.
Okay, if that's it, thank you very much for the presentation. We will move on to item 6A2, the Comprehensive Plan 2024 Amendment Overview of Draft and Comment Opportunities.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I won't take too much of the committee's time because we have talked about the comprehensive plan amendment related to our farmland preservation update a couple times. Following the last ERC meeting, I did send out an email that included correspondence that's going out about this amendment. So to recap, when we adopted the farmland preservation plan earlier this year, the state is requiring, as the final step in that adoption, we need to amend our comprehensive plan to include that updated farmland preservation plan. So that includes about 20 to 25 small amendments in our current comprehensive plan to just note that now we have a 2024 farmland preservation plan instead of a 2013 plan, update some information about the acreage and the funding for the farmland preservation program as well. What we've talked about before as well is that this comprehensive plan amendment is just focusing on what the state is requiring to keep our farmland preservation program active for this into the next year. There is another comprehensive plan update or refresh, as we like to call it, that is going to be launched this fall with the county board and with the executive committee. And that would be the time when the county board can work on those bigger changes to the comp plan that they want to see that reflect what's happened in the county over the last decade since the 2016 comp plan was adopted. So right now we are just doing this amendment for the farmland preservation plan. The letter that was included in your packet and is also online has notified all the people that we are required to notify by statute that we are taking input on this amendment right now and where and how they can come and give comment. That includes an open house that we're going to have at CPZ 210 River Drive on September 17th from 4 to 6 p.m. It also includes a public hearing that would take place here at the ERC meeting next month, October 3rd, 2024. And that's when, at that public hearing, we would be asking the ERC to then forward their recommendation to the county board to go forward with this amendment. I'll stop there and take any questions. I know we have discussed this with the whole county board and the ERC a couple times, so.
Any questions for Lori? All righty. So then we will move on to item 7, policy issues discussion and potential committee determination. 7A, 2025 annual budget development. 7A1, discussion of department rates and fees increases for 2025.
Okay, myself and Dave from Solid Waste are here, as well as Administrator Leonard. What we have brought forward are, for CPZ, we do take our guidance from the ERC as it relates to proposed fee changes for the programs that we have oversight over. Earlier this year, I believe the county board did approve that we should go forward with developing our budgets for 2025 with the assumption of 3% rate increases. So we did look at that within our department, and we wanted to discuss that with the ERC today just to get your feedback in terms of what to move forward with for developing our 2025 budget. Did you want to add anything before I jump into the specifics? Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Thanks, Lori. Again, just to reiterate it, the guidance from the county board through your budget priorities and budget assumptions setting process was to really approach it with a starting point of a 3% increase in our fees for services where state statutes allow for that flexibility. Again, there's a lot of places where that doesn't exist, where we either, one, don't have the opportunity to charge for our services, or two, if we do, they are set by state statute and or they may even be governed by state statute relative to the fee increases that are permitted. So that was my direction to department heads, was really to start with that, because again, we're going to have an increase in our operational expenses based on first and foremost wages, and wages we anticipate going up to, again, 3%. We know health insurance is likewise going to go up more than 3%. So that 3% kind of as the floor for a place for discussion, absent my discussion with department heads, if we know that the cost is not to that level, we might bring forward a different recommendation. So that was kind of the backdrop to each of the presentations you're going to get here today from Lori and from Dave. The last thing I'll say is that when you look at our budget this year, my goal is to have all of these fees essentially compiled into a single schedule as an appendix in the budget, which was an approach taken by one county in the state of Wisconsin that I really appreciated, kind of the way that was set out. The idea being that when you approve a budget that has revenues assumptions within it based on fees, those things are linked, right? You can't have a budget that is anticipating a certain revenue generation, a certain fee, and then have those fee increases not take effect. So bringing that all to the county board is ultimately in one package. That's our goal.
So as it relates to CPZ's fees, there's a handful of things I wanted to discuss with the ERC, starting with that 3% as the base of guidance. One thing we discussed from administering a new fee point of view is that having fees that are rounded to a 5 or a 0 will just make it much easier in terms of administering. If we took the straight 3% in every instance, we would be dealing with change. And I can tell you that we have had people pay for permits in change before, and we don't need any more of it. So we would prefer to stick with those 5s or 0s just to make it a little easier for also explaining to the public what something costs. So just a lot simpler. There are a handful of fees we did want to discuss with the ERC that we aren't proposing a change to. I guess the first, the address application, that actually has oversight in the Public Safety Committee, so that actually is one of our fees that doesn't fall under the ERC. 2 of our conservation areas are both the farmland preservation fees and our conservation, reserve enhancement program fees. We are not proposing changes to because those are incentive programs, so we're trying to get people to participate in those programs. So increasing the fees there puts more of a barrier to encouraging farmers to participate in good practices. So we're not seeing that it's a lot of effort for us to administer, we're covering with grants, and we don't need a lot of extra fee money to administer those programs. So we're not proposing any changes there. Similar with the equipment rentals that we have for conservation planning and zoning, we did a little looking around in terms of if somebody had to go elsewhere to rent this equipment, and found that we are at or above market on some of this. So we're trying to not increase those anymore so that we can encourage farmers to continue working with us and using our equipment. As it relates to our land division fees, we're proposing a bit of a restructure. We haven't looked at our land division fees at CPZ in probably, I'm going to say 6 years or more. So we did actually propose larger than 3% increases after talking with the surveyor and doing some looking around at other counties and how they also structured it. But one thing we are proposing, instead of historically, we've had this 1 lot, 2 lot, 3 lot, 4 lot certified survey map, we're just saying for 1 through 4 lots, it's just $200 flat, because there's not a lot of difference for us whether it's 1 or 4 lots, and it's also putting us more in line with what other counties are doing as well. So we decided to go with that as our proposed change, taking sort of a middle of the road approach in terms of what we need to administer those reviews. Again, with our condo plats and our preliminary plats, we did propose larger than 3% increases after doing some analysis and looking at that we need to recover more of our costs related to administering that work. As it relates to livestock facilities, there are state caps in place for that, so we actually don't have say in those fees. So we did keep those the same. As it relates to the non-metallic reclamation program, some of you who were on the committee last year may recall that we did actually do an analysis of where we were last year, and the state statute says that we can only recover what's reasonable and actual to administer that program. And after we did an analysis last year, we projected that we did need and implemented an 8% increase in our non-metallic fees to do that administration of the program. But we don't have a year's worth of data yet to determine if our projections were right or where we are in that frame of reasonable and actual cost. So we are proposing that we hold on those fees one more year so that we have at least a year's worth of data and can stay within what the state statute requires. As it relates to our private on-site wastewater treatment system fees, this is something we wanted to discuss with the ERC as well. As many of you know, we are working with our landowners to get our failing systems replaced. And that is a big cost for landowners. It has historically been quite a barrier to replace those systems. And as you know, we have the Wisconsin Fund, and we also have launched that McDevco loan program to try and remove those barriers for landowners. So after looking at what other counties are doing and where we kind of line up with other counties, we do feel our permit fees are where they should be for the POUTS permitting side of things. Where we're not possibly recovering our costs is related to our maintenance requirements in the state. So we are required to administer a maintenance program for our treatment systems, and we don't have anything in place to recover those costs at this time. We did start looking around at what other counties are doing, and we did find that there are many counties who have implemented either a special tax assessment and/or some sort of fee with their maintenance program. So we would propose that that's something that maybe the ERC wants to discuss with us in 2025 to see if we would want to add that type of fee to our structure. But at this point, we do feel where our POUTS permit fees are is pretty in line with other counties. And also by increasing them at this time, we're just putting one more barrier in place for people to get those failing systems replaced. So. And then our shoreline and zoning, we did take up by the 3%, but we again rounded to 5s and 0s to make it a little easier. So with that, I'll take questions.
Any questions for Lori? Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious if you have any numbers on how many times each permit was pulled, just to give a reference on how much income is being collected out of each of these permits.
Sorry, what do you mean by each permit was pulled?
How many times was each of these, how many times, so if you go at the top, how many times was a new address application fee, how many times that was actually pulled or accounted for?
I'm going to remember some off the top of my head, others I'm not. If we go to general zoning, actually, that's probably a good one. I mean, we were just talking about this today. You know, we see anywhere from 300 to 350 permits a year. The majority of those permits fall in 3 categories: accessory structures, single family and 2-family residence, and what's the third one? I'm looking at the side.
Additions usually.
I'm not seeing it on the list right now. It definitely falls in 3 areas, and I'm trying to find the third, but accessory structures, single and 2-family, and residential and agricultural additions. So probably 75% of our permits in the general zoning area are in those 3 categories.
Thank you. So this is just for me personally, but in years, in future years, it would be helpful for me to kind of visualize how many times each of these line items is being pulled or how many times this fee is being collected. So thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on this rental equipment, how much is that being used? I mean, how many farmers use it, and is it out a lot or not, or what?
I'm going to look to our county conservationist because she oversees, or her staff oversees the equipment rental.
The drills are very busy. They're out nonstop in the spring and in the fall. And then in the summer, they take a little nap for most of it, and the winter too, of course. But yeah, they're gone nonstop. They're in high demand. We could probably have another 1 or 2 and still have it out.
Okay, any other questions? All righty, thank you.
Do we, Administrator Leonard, do we need a motion for them to sign off on this, or do we just?
No, I think we're going to operate off the direction we got, and unless, again, if there's any significant concerns, please let us know at this committee discussion, but we're going to operate off the direction provided by the county board at your, I want to say it was your, I don't know, July meeting or August meeting, where we got the direction to work with the presumptive 3% increase unless there was a rationale, as Lori gave you a couple for why we wouldn't have that. And then it'll be incorporated into the budget. Of course, at the time of your budget consideration, whether at the HR Finance and Property Committee, this committee could provide some input to that committee to make changes during the time after I deliver it to HR Finance and Property, or of course, during your full budget deliberations at the county board, you could always change, modify the budget to reflect the will of the board. But at this point, I don't think we need a formal motion, but if anyone has strong feelings one way or the other, please let us know. Or questions, of course.
All right, I'll turn it over to solid waste.
Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. David Hagenbusher, Director, Solid Waste Department, if you don't know me yet. So we're going to run through a little bit more context for some of our rate and fee changes, specifically because we will be going beyond that 3% that was just discussed here. So I'll get into some of the details if you haven't had a chance to go through the packet yet. Do a little bit of an overview, some discussion on an audit that we recently did, talk about some of our generators, and then go right into our 2025 budget items here. So if you don't know, we're an enterprise fund, so we operate purely off of specifically tipping fees or charges that we put on our customers. So typically customers would be people that are coming to the landfill, haulers in our area. Sometimes we contract directly with municipalities, but this pays for absolutely everything we do, from administration to paying our staff, to purchasing equipment, building landfills, doing closure projects. Pretty much, like I said, every aspect of the work that we do, covering all the capital improvements, expansions, and then also our level of service. So how much do we want to provide back to the community? We have programs such as medication drop box that you've probably seen at the local PDs. We have Sharps collections, a number of different educational opportunities for our citizens, helping many of the municipalities with recycling cooperative, making sure that they're getting proper funding through the recycling grant. So those are just a few of the items that we do through solid waste. So this year specifically, actually it was 2023, was the 20-year mark in our 30-year agreement with Shawano and Portage County. So in 2003, Marathon County signed an intergovernmental solid waste agreement where waste would essentially come from Portage County and Shawano County at a certain percentage, and it would come to Marathon, which would be the home for the landfill. Back in the early 2000s, they had set up transfer stations, and this agreement was signed to move in this direction. Essentially, economy of scale, having more ability to bank on that tonnage that would be coming in, so that we could offset costs. So we're looking at our 20-year evaluation that we did. Foth Environmental, or some might know it as Foth Infrastructure, had performed this audit about late last year and pretty much through the beginning of this year. We actually audited 2023 as well. And some of their findings really identified some concerns with funding. And I'll get into a little bit about the details of what those concerns were. But specifically, we used capacity at a faster rate than we anticipated. We had some operating losses in there and a lack of cash resources, even though we had a significant amount of funding that was set aside for long-term care and closure. The cash resources that we had to pay for some of those expansions and equipment weren't quite there. Specifically, this relates to depreciation and amortization. Simple accounting principles where, hey, if we buy a piece of equipment and we don't set aside money for depreciation, how are we going to replace that equipment, right? So what we got into also is long-term care and closure liabilities, and I really want to call attention to the table here. And you can see over the past 5 years really where what we owed for long-term care and closure. This is Wisconsin DNR's way of making sure the county is setting aside enough money to pay for this if for some reason we were to walk away. So the DNR has to mandate for 40 years that we take care of the landfill. And if for some reason we were to walk away, they want to make sure that there's enough money set aside to actually close the landfill. And what you can see is this increase in what or what our shortfall was, and also an increase in the percent. Specifically, 2022 is up there, almost 14% increase. But because these increased so substantially, we really didn't adjust our rates accordingly, pretty much going back for quite a few years. What that means is, starting next year, we're going to have to start paying for this. We can't continue to operate the landfill. If it's costing us $100 a ton, we can't continue operating, charging $50 a ton. That's not practical. So our next steps after we identified some of these concerns earlier this year is we need to establish an accurate budget. We need to make sure that we are charging appropriate amount by doing a tipping rate analysis, and I'll get to that on our next slide here. But a tipping rate analysis is essentially looking at breaking it down into different categories and identifying exactly where all the money is going. We also have some short-term goals, basically analyzing the financial situation and then looking at what other potential revenue options might be available, specifically with our RNG funding that may be increasing in the near future. A little bit about our generators. So you can see the table in front of you. The generators, specifically the largest percentage, the 65%, that's coming from our curbside, from our residential, our municipalities. Contract is specifically businesses, so about 15% of our waste coming from those businesses. Gate is essentially customers with pickup trucks just coming into the facility and dropping off. And then we have the outside county, specifically Portage and Shawano. And then sludge materials is its own special. That's a unique waste material that we take from various paper mills, wastewater treatment plants, manufacturing like Line Tech and Walker Forge. So as we jump into our rates, you can really start to see that breakdown. So when we look at 10%, we're really looking at about transitioning from a $44 per ton rate up to a $48 per ton rate. And you can see that breakdown. The last item on that table, the landfill development, that was something that there was some oversight over the last probably 5 to 10 years. And are we charging an appropriate amount for that landfill development? That's really that amortization cost of, hey, we're going to have to build another landfill in the future. Once we run out of airspace, we'll have to build more capacity to continue providing our community with this service. Specifically, that $8 a ton where we weren't quite up to that level in the past. As we look to 2025 rates, one of our primary goals is always keeping costs low for our municipalities specifically. So historically, we've looked at from probably 2 to 3% on average for rate increases. This year, or 2025, we are proposing a 10% increase. We're going from $40 a ton up to $44. And like I said, we're not setting rates to establish a profit. I would never use a profit in our operating procedure. We're covering the expenses associated with operating such that we don't have to borrow from the tax levy. Something that I want to also call attention to is as tipping fees go up, you may see tonnage go away. There is competition. There's Wisconsin Rapids landfill that's operated by Waste Management. They also have a transfer station in Weston. Tipping fees go up enough, people may decide that they want to use the transfer station instead, at which point that waste may get transported down to Wisconsin Rapids. So here we have our fee breakdown and table. I actually provided years 23, 24, and 25. These specifically, the gate rate, once again, this is only 10% of our overall tonnage coming in, so that's only going up a slight amount. But our contract rate and our municipal rates, those are going to be increasing by that 10%. The rest of them, just slight incremental increases. And our recycling program that we offer at the facility isn't really made to make money. It's more of a convenience factor. If somebody comes in and they're bringing garbage, sometimes they have a dishwasher on there. Sometimes they have a microwave. Rather than them driving all the way across the county to a salvage yard, they have the opportunity to drop those in our yard as well, and then we can transport them for them. And then our numbers on household hazardous waste. So the household hazardous waste program is actually funded through the Bluebird Ridge landfill operations, but sometimes we also get what we call very small quantity generators, small businesses that are coming in. They might generate 2 or 3 55-gallon drums of paint material once a year, and we're able to provide those with the capacity and treatment. As we go to our 5-year CIP plan, you see some pretty big numbers in there. We're looking at $6 million for another expansion in a couple of years. We're looking at $3.5 million for another closure in a couple of years. And this has really been the standard for landfilling is we do an expansion every couple of years, and then we fill it up, and then we have to do a closure. So it's kind of this couple of years we build cash reserves, and then we spend it all in 1 year. And then a couple of years go by, we do it again, and then we have to build again. So the gas royalty is something new. In 2023, we signed the landfill gas purchase agreement. We are guaranteed a $300,000 paycheck for the landfill gas that we're delivering, and we only expect that to increase once they officially start up. For every 100 CFM of gas that we're able to send down the pipeline, we expect an additional $215,000 for Marathon County. Couple of key takeaways. We're looking at increases in 25, 26, and 27 to make up for these for this big difference in the owner financial responsibility. As you saw, we're still at a $6 million shortfall on what we owe as part of our liability towards Wisconsin DNR. So to get back to that, we're looking at a minimum of 10% increases for the next 3 years. A couple of other key takeaways. The significant capital expenses for closures and expansions, and also our heavy equipment. The primary machine we run out here is a landfill compactor, and that price tag is about $1.4 million if we were to purchase new. Fortunately, we don't want to do that anymore, and we found options to do rebuild programs, which will save us about half of that. Also, keeping costs manageable for our curbside. That's always been a priority. That's always been huge. Because essentially our haulers will be charging our municipalities. They will be charging the taxpayers who pay for carts at the end of their driveway and pick up once a week. And with that, I will take any questions.
Any questions for David? All righty, thank you.
Can I add one, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely.
Just to kind of add on to what Dave talked about, one other thing that and this is, again, credit to Dave, and he's been the director now for, feels like forever, Dave, doesn't it? But, you know, when we started, we have this 20-year long agreement with our partners in Portage and Shawano counties. One of the things that's called for, in addition to what Dave just referenced, that 20-year kind of look back on or check-in perhaps is a better way to say it with respect to our agreement, is annually we should be having an accounting of how did the landfill do. And then because this is a partnership, this isn't Marathon County doing a favor to Portage and Shawano. It's all of us working together. If we have a year where we are, as Dave said, if we're using capacity faster than we planned and our rate then is too low, that's essentially a year in the red. Well, that's not just a year in the red for Marathon County. That's a year in the red for our partners, and essentially we work together to fill that hole. The converse is likewise true. When we have a year in the black, there's an accounting done, and we share in the positives. Typically, that would be done through the generation of a reserve, like Dave alluded to. Now, the landfill's been in existence that agreement's been in existence for 20 plus years. That hasn't happened. So kudos to Dave and, taking a look at, when he started, take a look at that agreement, see where our opportunities are. We're going to be much more diligent in making sure those things happen and planful with respect to our fee increases. And I think the strategy that we discussed is, as Dave alluded to, if we know we're low on where our rates need to be to cover our cost, pick that off over several years, but also kind of the first year is generally heavier than you would plan on because you're accounting for during that 3-year catch-up period, you're also going to fall somewhat behind. So we're trying to do this, and we'll be continuing to check in, but this is, again, in my estimation, this is really consistent with the direction from the board to make sure our cost to do the work, particularly in enterprise funds and in non-mandated areas, which the landfill is, we're covering our costs to do business. So Happy to take any questions. I know the Solid Waste Management Board had a long conversation about this. I think if you take a look at the county's annual audit, you'll see kind of the reserves that, as Dave said, you generally build reserves for a while because once you add a cell at the landfill, you have a lot of years where you're filling it up. But then when you have to close the thing, that's an expensive proposition. So,
Yeah. Thank you for that in addition.
Okay, any questions for the administrator or David? All righty, thank you. Okay, we will move on to item 7A2, consideration of new position request and reclassifications in connection with development of the 2025 budget. Solid Waste Department, one full-time employee, environmental management specialist position, conservation planning and zoning, administrative restructuring.
So I can kick it off and then Dave can answer any questions. So pursuant to your existing ordinances for Marathon County and the directives the county board provided during the budget, if a department wants to add a new position through the budget process, it's governed by section 4.20 of the Marathon County Code of Ordinances. And it, generally speaking, what happens is a department puts together their request, it's reviewed by myself, and then I would make a recommendation on whether or not that would move forward. Ultimately, whatever recommendation, if I bring a recommendation to move forward, the position just isn't created. It has to go through the standing committee process, beginning with this committee, then going to HR, Finance, and Property. And then ultimately, because this is a position going through the budget process, it's voted on as part of the budget. If it were happening in the middle of the year outside the budget process, it would have to go to the full county board. So with that background, just like to again reiterate what guidance you provided administration relative to new positions as part of your budget priority discussion. Essentially, you said no new positions that are funded by tax levy or that would be funded in the future by tax levy is how I interpret it. So Dave's position is at the landfill and it is tasked, this position would be tasked with, as Dave alluded to earlier in his presentation, the idea that landfill gas is very important based on that landfill gas purchase agreement that was negotiated a bit over a year ago. We have gas quality targets that we are obligated via contract to work toward hitting, and also it benefits us from a financial perspective to maximize the quality and quantity of gas that we generate at the landfill within the other operating requirements we have under state statutes. So this position would be funded by landfill revenues and would work to monitor the landfill gas wells that Dave can talk more about. The only other thing I'll say is that the position would be slated to start after, if it were approved through the budget process. We wouldn't go ahead and recruit for it right away. We would want to work with our partner at the renewable natural gas partner to make sure that we time the recruitment and onboarding of that position to coincide with when that renewable natural gas plant is up and running. But that's at a high level kind of what the position would be aimed at accomplishing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really about getting the efficiencies out of the landfill gas collection system. So we are required by law to monitor the landfill, the gas wells. We have 70 gas wells on site. That's only expected to go up about 5 to 6 wells every year. But that's one individual's part of their job right now is just to maintain compliance. But really getting to the efficiencies. Right now, our landfill is about 75% efficient in collection. For the landfill gas that's modeled to be generated, and that's what's been calculated. But we really want to get to that 80-85%. As I had said, we're at about 1,000 CFM right now. Every additional 100 CFM is about $215,000 for Marathon County. So really, we see this position as paying for itself, in addition to being obligated to provide and hit those gas quality targets. As you can see in some of the language on the screen here, we're supposed to be using all commercially available means to harvest the landfill gas and maximize that volume. Another item in the landfill gas purchase agreement specifies that Section 9.4 in Verity's right to terminate says that if they determine in their reasonable discretion that the landfill is not generating sufficient quantities of landfill gas to make the operation commercially viable, they may terminate, which we don't want either. So it's about building a support system, some bench strength. Right now, if this individual that we currently have doing this work leaves, or if they take a vacation, if they quit for some reason, we're probably looking at a 3 to 6 months window where we won't really have somebody to fill in that role and go out every single day and tune those gas wells. We'll really be losing out on the efficiency. We'll be losing out on that additional revenue that we could have saw otherwise. We've looked at doing some cross-training in-house. We've looked at doing some options with LTE staff, but because it's a position that would be required to have a degree and some specialized training, LTEs may not be able to fill that role. Usually LTEs are here for a summer and then they're gone, or they may have to go back to school. Doing cross-training in-house could work, but we're probably looking at pulling away from compaction, pulling away from compliance, pulling away from our level of service that we're providing. So it's hard to pick which one we want to pull that from, or we may result in quite a bit of overtime trying to meet this requirement of our contract. So I am happy to take any questions if you have any. But yeah, this position, as Administrator had alluded to, would start up when RNG actually starts up, which we're expected probably by next June.
And the last thing I'll add is that this did go through the HR Finance and Property Committee. So again, your process is go through the Standing Committee of Jurisdiction, which is this committee, and also through HR Finance to get incorporated into the budget. They approved incorporating it into the budget contingent upon your approval. But just in terms of timing, we wanted to get in front of HR Finance at its last meeting.
Okay, so I'm clear, we're making a motion on this?
Yes, it would be a motion to approve the inclusion of this position in the administrator's 2025 annual budget.
Okay, any questions? Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dave, one of the concerns that our county board has been having is the attraction of specialized talent, especially regarding natural gas collection. How specialized are the skills for this position? How far do we have to reach regionally, nationally to attract something like this?
That's an excellent question. So we're very fortunate to be located right next to UW Stevens Point, who they have a degree in soil and waste resource management. It's actually the degree that I received quite a few years ago. But that class usually puts out about 5 waste majors every year that specialize in in landfilling and solid waste and recycling. So we're usually able to we have a good communication with the school, with their counselors and their guidance, and we're able to to get some young talent that hopefully they would be able to start as an intern and then work their way into a position.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion? Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd make a motion to how do we word this here? For a position for the solid waste department, and that would be a 1.0 FTE, and it would be a waste management specialist. So I would just say we hire him.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Tom Miller has a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Did that include the budget and the hiring of the person? Weren't we supposed to approve their budget also?
I was interpreting the motion consistent with what was on the agenda and what the administrator said, which was to a motion to have the administrator include that position in the budget. if that's the committee's understanding of the motion, then I think you're okay.
Was that your,
That was mine.
okay. And that's your second? Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, okay, very good.
no cartoons.
Got one more. Go for it. You want to start?
Well, Lori and I can do rock, paper, scissors for this one too. The same backstory on kind of the process applies to this, what we're terming a kind of a reorganization of the administrative staff within conservation planning and zoning. The important thing from my perspective is, well, twofold. One, I think this is a better operational fit for the needs of conservation planning and zoning, but also for the county as a whole, based on some of the things Lori can get into in her presentation. But second, and more fiscally important, is that it comes at it's either cost neutral or a cost savings.
Correct.
And I anticipate it actually to be a cost savings. So because of that, those two factors, I certainly support moving forward with this reorganization. And with that, Lori, take it away.
Yeah, so for conservation, planning, and zoning, we are proposing a restructure of our positions. This is to align with a couple different things. One, the new work that came to conservation, planning, and zoning in 2022 and 2023. Many of you know that we took on real property listing, the assessments, and parcel mapping over at CPZ. Those moved over there. So in part, that's to address the work that we're doing related to that. Also, as we've moved into the workday era, the guidance has been to definitely centralize and make accounting more consistent across the county so that we can better train our accountants and also just have more efficiencies as it relates to that. So each department is doing things in a more similar fashion. We did not have an accountant position at CPZ, so that is part of what we're proposing in the restructure. Is right now what we have is a business manager and some senior admin specialists, and then an administrative assistant. Our administrative assistant has historically been a difficult position to fill. It's just, it's just had a lot of turnover, and we found that there isn't a good, I don't want to say good use, but basically the way we have made more efficient some other parts of our regulatory programs, there hasn't been as much need for that administrative assistant position. But so what we are proposing then through this restructure is to take our business manager, which sits at a higher class, put that to an office manager, which is a slightly lower class, but at the same time, take one of our senior administrative specialists and move them up to an accountant. So as Administrator Leonard was saying, it's a wash in terms of, because one is coming down, the other is going up, and so it ends up being net neutral for our budget. At the same time, we are proposing to abolish our administrative assistant position and create another position for an RPL technician to help us address our real property listing and assessment work that came over to CPZ. And in the memo, I explain at a very high level how we, again, are going to do this as it relates to the business manager, the office manager, the accountant, and the senior administrative assistant. We abolish the business manager to create the accountant, and then abolish a senior admin specialist to create the office manager. For the RPL technician, what we would do is abolish our administrative assistant position. We would also abolish a couple of limited term employment items we have in our budget, just to make sure, again, that we are meeting the budget net neutral or cost savings, and then create one FTE for a real property listing technician. It's a little complicated, but let me know what questions you have.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Lori or the administrator? Okay, and again, we are making a motion.
Yes, if you support moving forward in this fashion, I believe, Corp Counsel, the motion would be to direct administration to proceed with adopting the proposed restructuring as set forth in the information in the packet into the 2025 annual budget. And I would say, as well as it was consistent with the solid waste position, this restructure also went through the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee. It was approved contingent upon approval by this committee as well.
Okay, what are your wishes? Supervisor Seifelt.
I'll make a motion for the conservation planning and zoning administrative reconstructing and what Lance just said, so.
Beautiful. And Supervisor Drabek seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving on to item 8. Next meeting is October 1st, 2024, 3 p.m., Assembly Room, and future agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussions. Are there any announcements, requests, or correspondence?
I do have one announcement, just that we will send out the 2025 ERC meeting dates so you can get those on your calendar, and then we'll put it on next month's agenda as well, just to go over that.
Good. Any others?
Great job to Vice Chair Ritter.
Thank you. All right, item number 9, a motion for adjournment. Supervisor Seifelt with the motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Supervisor Drabek, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.
Oh, this is Shad's USB?
Where's our retirement?
Hey, was I supposed to get were you sending out emails on that? Oh, you were going to get, okay, just wondering.
Perfect.